Isaiah, at the time that you went to college, was your father alive?
My father was alive. Now, the interesting thing about my father, my mother, and my father, and again, you know, people who were coming up in the '60s, you will know this. You know, so we had to go on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go on welfare, I mean, the U.S. government was really breaking up your family because the man couldn't be inside the household.
Right.
And so my father had to leave so we can get on welfare, get the welfare check, and then they started having teaching and everything else. But my mom, my dad, when he looked at Indiana, he did not like me playing basketball.
Okay.
My father
I let it play a
didn't
little.
like nothing about entertainment. My father was everything about books, learning, getting educated, because this is the way you're going to make it in this world.
Right.
Son, if you think you're going to make it in this world bouncing a basketball, that's not how you're going to make it. You're not going to be, you know, and his beliefs was, you know, entertainment, you know, wasn't the door or the avenue for you to make it. It was
Right.
education. And those were his beliefs.
All right, let's get into it. I really want to know the point of this person's questions. Said welfare wasn't breaking up married couples where the dad was working. Well, there is a such thing as working poor. And it was a lot of working poor black people. I could show you the data on that. So yeah, it did cripple. It did break up some families. Or as Isiah Thomas worded it, he said it caused a rift. It caused some tension between him and his mom. Because in order for them to get to welfare, he couldn't be there. Isiah Thomas talked about how poor they were. But get this, they were that damn poor when he talked about the roach crawling above Bobby Knight's head. They were that damn poor long after the dad was gone. Long after dad wasn't there. I think the dad might have been dead during the time on the timeline, because his father did pass away, if I understand that right. Because they alluded to it, but they didn't get heavy into it. But I think when Isiah Thomas was talking about how his dad didn't think entertainment or basketball or anything would be Isiah Thomas's way of making it, I think that he was telling him that earlier. I think later he died. Isiah Thomas did make it in the NBA eventually, but I don't think you can just flat out say if the dad was working. Like what that reeked of is somebody trying to it sounds like that was a statement that reeked of you know, you niggas was incompetent, she had no choice. That's what that reeked of. Which is kind of distasteful, because, you know, we understand the times that they were coming out of. We understand that a hard-working man, most men back then, but especially black men, a hard-working man back then doing what he got to do to provide for his family. Ends wouldn't always meet, but they were a friggin' family. You could see how much he valued education. You could see how Isiah Thomas talked about how, yeah, you know, hard work and education, that was what his dad felt was the way to get out of it. So it's hard for me to believe he wasn't a man who wasn't about working hard. It just, even with people back then, I've told a lot of stories from people who were around back then who worked hard and made it big and made it rich. You know, I highlighted the story of Larry Elder's dad, who was actually, you know, before this time. You know, he made it big in that time. You know, it was not big, but he was a business owner. I talked about John James, how his dad, coming out of that time, you know, started a business that grew to millions of dollars right now. John James runs that business now. It's worth $134 million. So yeah, people can make it back then, but you're going down a very goofy path if it's a matter of, if we're talking about shitting on actual intact family that were just in that time. You know, we're talking we're talking coming out of the 60s into the 70s, you know, when all of this would have had to been going on. You know, Isiah Thomas made it to the NBA in, I want to believe 81. That's one of my NBA history things I should know off the top of my head. But no, I don't know that. But I do know that he was, they did 4 years in college back then. So I'm assuming he was 77 when he started his career at Indiana University. So I'm assuming Bobby Knight was recruiting him. We're talking 76, 75, somewhere in that range. So that's when we're talking. That's when we're talking. And times was hard for a lot of black people. And I understand that, you know, free food from, well, not free food, but food from the government is enticing. But even while getting that food from the government, as you can see, even when Isiah Thomas made it all the way almost damn near adulthood, they were still poor. Ain't like it saved them. Ain't like it did anything. The only thing it did is it took the father, the only one who seemed to, you know, have some type of mindset, at least, of structure. He probably ain't had the money, but he did have a mindset of structure, because Isiah Thomas told the stories about his mom, how they pistol packing, got hot sauce and chicken in the bag at the Pistons game, and security tried to talk to him and got cussed out, and then they went to Isiah like, hey, you think you can get your mom and auntie them? And he's like, I can't tell them what to do. You know, that's who was raising them. That's who those kids were left at the mercy of. Had Isiah Thomas not made it to the NBA, that family would have been shit. My parents and grandparents were not on welfare, and most of those I grew up around were not either, only non-married women. Okay. I don't understand the point. I don't understand the point. That yes, there were some families that didn't get on welfare. There were some families that I think made the right call. That if we are married, and if we are in the working poor, we are a working poor family. The operative word here is family. So yes, there are some women who made the right decision. So I don't know if you're making a counterpoint or if you're just adding to what I'm saying. Like, I don't know who you are. If we're talking about families that made the right call, yes, we're going to be poor, but we're going to be poor together. Or we're going to be poor apart, but we got some damn government cheese. Like, that's a bad call. That's a bad decision. And somebody would always ask the question, well, okay, well, what were they supposed to do? Were they supposed to starve to death? I think this was a while ago. BGS and the Wigdit one were in a back and forth, not a formal debate, but they were just on the same panel at the same time or whatever. And she said, well, what were black women supposed to do? You know, something along the line where they just supposed to starve. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly what happened. I think BGS might have took the bait on that and said, I think he may have said, yeah, starve or whatever. But the more sober way to deal with that one is to just simply ask the right question. In 1975, what was the starvation rate in America? What was the starvation rate? How many families starved to death? How many children starved to death in America? The only time you can look up and you can find people starving to death in America, I mean, actually starving to death, is during the Great Depression. That's the most recent time where you can find people starving. That's the only time that you can find people actually starving. Well, the most recent time that you can find people starving. It wasn't a thing in, you know, pre-welfare where, you know, okay, it's 1962. You went and did a wellness check. You knocked on the door. You went in there. A family of 5, husband, wife, 3 children. cause of death, starvation. Like that wasn't a thing. People were poor. That's what it was. People were poor. And so, seeing as they were poor without the dad, poor with the dad, you should have been poor with the dad. And, you know, his ability in that time where, you know, things were different. Things were harder. Right? We talk a lot now, like, ain't no excuse, man. If you ain't performing, you ain't producing. Not that you got to be you don't have to be a six-figure brother, but you should be sufficient. You know, back then, simply just getting enough food in the mouth of your family was enough, you know. That's how it was back then. Hood conservative in the building. Food is so cheap. We give a lot of it away for free. Oh yeah, nowadays, look, man, the amount of food that I throw away is just heartbreaking. We throw away so much food. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so yeah. Food is cheap, but times were hard. Times were hard, but the main focus is that he talked very clearly about how something that we talk about a lot, how welfare was breaking up the family. How his father couldn't be in the house if they accepted welfare. And the part that really jumped out to me is just the how he said that caused tension between the mom and the dad, which means they were still kind of together. They were still kind of living together. I mean, not living together. You know, it became an awkward thing where they were together. They separated for whatever tactical reason for the welfare. She wanted to get welfare. She wanted him out the house. Now it's a fair point to be made. You shouldn't have fucking left. You shouldn't have left. But you already know how that go. If they just getting by, if they rationing food, they got some potatoes that they, you know, handing out one potato to each kid for dinner and a little small portion of rice or some shit. You know, that if they rationing off food like that, and that woman sitting there telling him, well, we could be eating better if you just got up out of it. If you just got the hell up out this house, we could be eating better. Like, I'm not getting out of my house. We're not doing it. And she coming at him like that. Now that house is becoming a war zone. They constantly they at war with each other. They fighting. They arguing. She arguing him down. She basically, we see it in modern times how a woman act when she really just don't want to be with a dude no more. She just become the most ornery and unbearable bitch known to man. Like, I think we know and understand how that works. So I'm trying to break this down to an interpersonal level. Just imagine the relationship dynamic. Try to imagine that. Try to imagine the amount of stuff she just had that she was complaining about daily. It's like that's what I think Isiah was talking about when he said it caused some tension between his mom and dad. And then even after the dad folded, gave in, and he left or whatever, or tried to leave, you know, because some people tried to, you know, pull a little Jedi mind trick on the system. They would get rid of all the dad's clothes, his toothbrush, socks, drawers, get everything out the house, make sure it looked like no man lives there. And The people, they come there, they check. They confirm no man living there, they get the welfare, but then the dad's still kind of there. But it's still a situation where now she ain't respecting him. She's took a bite of that forbidden fruit. She feel like she can live without him now. So that was a tension, and now he can't have nothing at the house, so he can't be at the house. So he out about doing shit. He probably done found some new pussy. She probably complaining about him finding some new pussy. He was like, "You ran me out the damn house. What the hell?" That mixed with the whole second wave of feminism and the birth of the strong, independent, don't need no man, even though you living off the government culture of it all. And that's the Not So Beautiful Being footage for you, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed what you saw here today, be sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. And if you wish to support the channel, the best way that you can do that by becoming a Patreon. The link is in the chat. And once again, thank you, everybody. If you're here already, if you lasted this long, you ought to be subscribed. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, bang the bell, hit the like button on your way out. And once again, I'd like to thank you. We are out of here. Peace.